Can the Sofabaton's flagship X1 Universal Remote finally dethrone my Harmony Elite Universal Remote from the now defunct line of remotes from Logitech? I posed this question when I unboxed the X1 remote from Sofabaton. Well, I've spent some time with it, putting it through its paces, it's battle tested, and now I'm ready to give you my answer. But first, a couple of disclaimers. Sofabaton did send this remote to me for free. However, I'm not getting paid to make this video, and all the thoughts and opinions expressed are my own. And Sofabaton is not reviewing this video prior to it being posted. So thank you, Sofabaton, for supporting the channel. While this is a review of the Sofabaton X1 remote, I will be doing direct comparisons to my Harmony Elite remote, the Harmony Hub, and Harmony software throughout this review, as the Harmony Elite has been the gold standard for remotes in my home theater. And I know many of you watching this use a Harmony Elite or some other Harmony remote. Now, I have a lot to say in this video, so this is going to be a pretty extensive review, but I've included chapter markers if you want to skip around. Let's discuss. The setup process isn't horrible, but it does leave a lot to be desired, especially when compared to my Harmony Elite with the Harmony Hub. Product support can be a hit or miss at times, depending on what you're adding. For most of my components, I had no issues, but others, not so much. More on that in a bit. Setting up my Anthem MRX 720 receiver, there were no issues. It found the receiver and added it. Same thing for my Oppo BDP 203, my Apple TV 4K, and my NVIDIA Shield. When adding the Apple TV and the Shield, it recognized that both devices support Bluetooth and asked if I wanted to control via RF or Bluetooth. So I selected Bluetooth since both of those devices are within about a foot from the X1's hub. Both devices display the Sofabaton under the Bluetooth settings and paired the device with no problems. However, the setup process was not as fluid when trying to add my Xbox Series X and my PS4. When trying to add my Xbox Series X and PS4, it found both of the companies, Microsoft and Sony, but that was it. I was unable to add the PS4 or the Xbox Series X because it just couldn't find them. I find this to be extremely odd, seeing as product support for the two biggest console giants and arguably the two most recognizable consumer electronics in the world don't have native support. Now, I would think if nothing else, Xbox and PlayStation consoles would be the most compatible and widely available remote codes available, seeing as probably almost every household has at least one of the two, whether it be an Xbox Series X, an Xbox One, Xbox 360, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, or PS3. And the fact that not one of those shows up in the product list is just absolutely baffling to me, with the exception of the PS3, which does show up in the product list, which makes it even more baffling that a console that is 2 generations behind is supported, but not current gen consoles. And this just isn't the case with the Harmony Elite. So if you're watching this Sofabaton, please get on this ASAP, because I can already tell it's going to be an issue for a lot of people. Now, I have no qualms that when they do get the correct remote codes for PlayStation and Xbox, that just like my other components, it's going to work just fine. But I'm not about to spend hours teaching the remote every single command. Teaching remote codes or fixing remote codes are fine for 1 or 2 buttons here and there, but not for an entire device. I also ran into a similar issue when trying to add my Epson 5040 UB projector. For whatever reason, it acts like it can't find it. However, there were multiple remote code options that I could choose from and test to see if it worked with my projector. And when I say multiple, I mean 62 to be exact. No, that is just way too many remote codes to have to cycle through and test each one. No one is gonna spend that amount of time troubleshooting remote codes. So weird. Either it's in the database or it's not. Again, this just isn't an issue with my Harmony Elite. You search the database and it finds it. I've never really found a major product that wasn't supported in Harmony's database. So I wasn't able to test functionality with my projector. And I don't think I could even if I wanted to, seeing as my projector is directly above my listening position and my rack is in the back of the room. With my Harmony hub, I had to get a really long 2.5mm cable extender and connect it to one of its infrared blasters and fish it through the ceiling to my projector. And it works. Now you're probably thinking, well, just unplug the infrared blaster from the Harmony hub and plug it into the X1's hub. But you can't do that because the X1's hub uses a 3.5mm infrared connector. So I bought a 3.5 to 2.5mm adapter and tried that, but it didn't work. However, I don't know if it didn't work because of the adapter or because I just couldn't find the correct remote codes. I tried about 15 to 20 different codes out of the 62 before I just gave up. Again, that's just way too many codes to have to cycle through. Now, I do want to give a shout out to Sofabaton for some amazing customer service. When I tried to add my HD Fury 4K Diva, the device was not found in the product list. So I immediately emailed my contact at Sofabaton to let them know. And a few minutes later, I received an email asking me to provide the product and model number and that they would pass that information along to their technicians. So I did. And the following morning, I woke up to another email from Sofabaton stating that the technicians had added the product and to kindly wait 24 hours for the product to show up in the list. Wow. Now, that's how customer service should be done. Keep up the great work, Sofabaton. So I waited a full 24 hours, and sure enough, I was able to add my Diva. So I'd give the setup process about 3 out of 5 stars. The majority of my devices were added, but others are still hit or miss. But once you get through the setup process, the remote worked flawlessly, controlling my components. And that's where this remote really shines. Its functionality. If your product is supported, it's just gonna work. The response time from hitting a button on the remote to the signal being sent to the hub and the hub sending out the codes via the infrared blasters is super quick and snappy. Instantaneous. It never lagged or failed to execute a command. And if for some reason one of the buttons isn't mapped, remapping a button for a specific code is super fast, simple, and reliable. Creating activities was pretty basic, but also straightforward and simple. However, I did run into an issue with my HD Fury 4K Diva. If you don't know what the 4K Diva is, I have a full review on my channel that you can watch. But essentially, it lets me get Dolby Vision by way of low latency Dolby Vision on my projector. But it also has HDMI switching capabilities, which is where I ran into issues. Now, I have all my components connected to the Diva, and the Diva is connected to my receiver. When I tried to set up an activity with my Anthem MRX receiver, my Apple TV and 4K Diva, it didn't give me the option on the Diva to select the input that my Apple TV was connected to, like it should have done when it asked what input needs to be selected for my receiver. In fact, it doesn't show any inputs at all. Even after setup was complete, I could go into the settings and select the different inputs, but I don't think the remote codes or the inputs are entirely accurate because some worked and then others didn't. And I can't teach the X1 remote codes because there is no remote for the HD Fury 4K Diva. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Also, you can't edit an activity unless that activity you want to edit is active. And I found this out the hard way because every time I clicked on an activity to edit it, it would just activate the activity whether I wanted to or not. So please address that, Sofabaton. Now, one feature that I am very glad to see, but really has nothing to do with the actual functionality of the remote, but is very important nonetheless, is an audible remote finder. Thank you, Sofabaton, for including this feature. As much as I love my Harmony Elite, this was something that Harmony never incorporated in their remotes, and I have no idea why. If you've ever misplaced your remote, you know how incredibly infuriating it can be to try to locate it. Being able to open up an app, select Remote Find, and track down your remote with a distinct audible sound should be mandatory. And I'm glad to see that Sofabaton recognized the importance of this. I wouldn't call this remote ergonomic, but that doesn't mean that it's not comfortable to use. I actually love how it feels in my hand. I prefer the texture of the X1 over my Harmony Elite. While the Elite is more contoured for finger placement, the Elite does have more of a bulky feel to it, and the heft of the Elite's weight is all at the bottom and not very balanced at all. The X1 feels perfectly balanced and light, but still feels premium. However, what I don't like is a few button placements. The back button at the top just feels out of place, and the functionality is a bit odd. The only way to exit out of an activity or a specific device is to hit the back button at the top. For activities, it's probably not too big of a deal. But if you don't have any activities set up and are just controlling each device individually, then having to constantly reach for the back button on the top of the remote just gets annoying. The back button should be closer to the rest of the buttons. I'm also not a huge fan of the scroller wheel. Having a scroller takes away from the premium feel of the remote, and every time I use it, it just makes me feel like I'm using some weird hybrid mouse/remote. I get the concept. It's probably much faster to scroll through numerous remote options than hitting a directional button one by one. But I just don't like using it, and even more, I don't like that the only way to select an activity or a device and its options are by clicking down on the scroller. It just feels clunky and cumbersome, and I'd much rather just have a touchscreen like the Harmony Elite. There's also no tactile confirmation that a button has been pressed. This is nitpicking here, but I like that my Harmony Elite gives me the option to turn on or turn off the tactile feedback when a button is pressed. Hey, what's up? You've made it this far in the video, so welcome to the channel and thank you for watching. If this is your first time visiting the channel and you're enjoying the content that I produce here, why don't you go ahead and do me a solid, hit the subscribe button, let your friends know about the channel, and hit the bell notification so you know when I post new content. And if you're enjoying this video, why don't you go ahead and hit the like button. It'll help the channel grow and I would greatly appreciate it. All right, well, I guess that's it. I'll let you get back to the video. Battery life seems to be good so far. It has a lithium-ion battery with a claimed battery life of 3 months usage on a single charge. That remains to be seen, as I haven't had the remote nearly that long, so we'll see. I also would prefer a charging cradle, but again, this is more nitpicking at this point. With a cradle, it's stationary, you don't move it, and it's just set it and forget it. I realize the convenience and versatility of a USB-C cable for charging. You can plug it up almost anywhere, but cables can get lost, and I'd at least prefer an option for both and let the user decide. The X1 has superior remote code learning, in my opinion, compared to Logitech. And I found that when I did have to teach the remote to fix a command, you point your remote of choice at the hub and the hub saves the command. And then it just works. Whereas doing the same thing with the Harmony hub, I found that at times it could take way longer with multiple attempts. On the Harmony, you can teach the hub codes by either pointing a remote at the hub or pointing at a very tiny sensor on the back of the Elite. But I've never really had a good experience with either of those on the Elite, so the X1 gets more points in that area. The X1 offers Google Home Assistant and Amazon Alexa support with voice commands for those of you who are invested in those ecosystems. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to test this feature as I don't use either of those. I have in the past, but if you're regular on the channel, then you know I'm a HomeKit user. But let me know in the comments what your experience has been with either of those if you use that feature. Unfortunately, there is no HomeKit support. Now granted, my Harmony Hub doesn't have native HomeKit support, but I use a plugin via Homebridge that allows me to turn on my activities via voice command. And there's native support for Google and Alexa, so why not HomeKit? I don't know if the X1 is even capable of supporting HomeKit or not, but hopefully it can be added in the future. Just like the Elite, the remote is set up entirely using the Sofabaton app. However, Harmony does have desktop software that allows you to configure and gives you far more customization of the remote more intimately than the app. But doing so means that you have to plug the remote directly into the computer. Now, as far as I know, there is no such option for the X1. I think the X1 software is on the right track and it gets a lot of things right, but software support still needs some improvement. At times, the device compatibility can be hit or miss, and the product database can be inaccurate and confusing with device manufacturers showing up, but no actual device for your specific product, like my Xbox and my PlayStation 4. There's also no native iPad app support. Probably more nitpicking with this one. You can download the iPhone app on your iPad, but it's at a much lower resolution and doesn't take advantage of the entire screen, so obviously the app was only developed for the iPhone. The Harmony software gives you a full screen, full resolution iPad app with the exact same functionality of the iPhone app. So it would be nice to get a native iPad app for the X1. There is no touchscreen capabilities on the X1. And I think that this is both a blessing and a curse. Now, if you're like me, then there's been many times where you've accidentally hit the Elite's touchscreen with the back of your hand, or you just picked up the remote in a wrong way and you end up accidentally hitting an activity when you didn't want to. Super annoying. On the other hand, it's 2020 and pretty much everything has a touchscreen now. And to me, the benefits of a touchscreen outweigh the negatives, and I would much prefer having a touchscreen over a scroll wheel. All right, so who is this remote for? Honestly, I think this remote is for anyone and everyone. If you're just getting started on building your home theater, or you're just a casual viewer with multiple set-top boxes, streaming devices, gaming consoles, and Blu-ray players, and you don't want to fiddle with multiple remotes, then the X1 remote is obviously for you. And if you missed out on all the Harmony remotes over the last few decades, then there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve setting up the remote and adding devices, especially if your device is not supported, because at that point, you'll probably have to do some extensive remote code learning. Or you can just reach out to Sofabaton to let them know which device you have that isn't supported. But once you get everything up and running, the remote is an absolute pleasure to use. Super snappy response time. It's going to feel comfortable in your hand. It has good texture for grip with a hub and multiple infrared blasters. You shouldn't have any issue with functionality and controlling your devices in a rack or a cabinet. And for those of you who are diehard Logitech Harmony fanboys like myself, looking for a viable long-term replacement for your Harmony Elite, Harmony's flagship universal remote, once you get over the clunky setup process and subpar software compared to Logitech, I think you'll find that the X1 remote is a heavyweight contender with massive potential to equal or even surpass the Harmony Elite as their #1 home theater universal remote. And for previous Harmony remote users, the setup process learning curve shouldn't be as harsh. Setup process does need some refinement, software needs to be improved, and product support needs, well, more support. But don't let that stop you from buying the X1. Just like any new company or any new device, there's going to be bugs to work out and room for improvement. And Sofabaton seems to really be listening to their consumers about bugs and features that are either lacking or missing, which in my testing is not that much. They've got amazing customer service with a lightning fast response time, adding products to their ever-growing product list of over 500,000 devices. Aside from its flaws, it's actually a really, really good remote and a far cry from its predecessor, the U1, which I haven't even really touched since I reviewed it. All right, guys, so final thoughts and a public service announcement. When you consider that Sofabaton only has 2 remotes under their belt, the U1 and now the X1 does have some flaws in certain areas, but considering the vast improvement from the U1, its functionality, it has a hub, It has an app, it has infrared blasters, it has a decent database of products, a solid remote learning system, it has a remote finder, and most importantly, solid functionality. Once you get it set up and configured, I can honestly recommend you give this remote a try. Is it a Harmony Elite killer? No. Not yet. That being said, as I said earlier, I do believe this remote absolutely has the potential to equal or even surpass the Harmony Elite. But I think it's going to take some time and some refinement with provided feedback from content creators like myself and general consumers, you guys. And Sofabaton hasn't shied away from feedback. And really, I don't think that there are very many remotes out there that can straight up beat the Harmony Elite. Logitech had years, decades of research and development to craft what is almost the perfect remote. All right, my final public service announcement. To Sofabaton, I think you have a solid remote on your hands with amazing potential to be a legitimate contender and a solid option as a and possibly the universal remote now that Harmony is no more. But you're not there yet. So my advice, go buy a Harmony Elite remote, download the software, the Harmony software, and take notes. Have your technicians and R&D do a deep dive, keep listening to feedback and improving the X1, and you'll be just fine. To the home theater enthusiast, receiver companies are notorious for releasing AVRs and processors with buggy software and firmware, knowing they can push software and firmware updates to the consumer. This is just common knowledge, and yet we continually spend our money on them. And we're talking thousands of dollars for high-end equipment. The X1 is no different. And in this case, we're talking $189 with a 40% discount. That's $75 off. To me, that's at least worth a shot. And Sofabaton has shown that they want to make a great product by listening to consumer feedback and then actually implementing and fixing whatever issues there may be. Worst case scenario, if you decide you don't like it, just return it. No harm, no foul. But I think you'll find that the most important aspect of a universal remote, the functionality of the remote, works great. So that's my review of the Sofabaton X1 remote. If you want to purchase the X1, there is an affiliate link in the description, and if you use my promo code HATERADE, you'll get 30% off with an additional 10% off at checkout if you select the box before you add it to your cart. That 30% promo code is only good for 30 days, but I got Sofabaton to extend it for this review. And that 30 days starts now. All right, now it's time for Query of the Week. This week's query is, what are your thoughts on universal remotes? Do you think that they're vital for home theater? Or do you think that they're on their way out with all the voice control options available? Let me know in the comments. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this thorough review. It was a little longer than my normal videos, but I really wanted to give you a detailed review of the X1 remote because, as we all know, Harmony is no more, and everybody is looking for a viable replacement to Harmony's remotes, especially the Elite. So again, I think this remote has a ton of potential. I think the sky's the limit. They've got some things to work on. They've got some issues and some bugs to fix, but I really do think that this remote is going to be very, very good because Sofabaton is a company who listens to consumers and they actually take that information and make the necessary changes. A lot of companies don't do that, guys. So that is actually very important, if not the most important thing about a company. Listening to consumers, putting the consumer first, and then making a good product that everybody can use. For Haterade Cowboy Cinema, I'm Haterade Cowboy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.